Welcome to Dark Horse Auto and Diesel. Today I'm over at Meat Hammer Motorsports, or whatever this illegal immigrant is using for an alias today. Probably shouldn't say that. Immigration's going to be knocking on both of our doors. Today we're changing a low pressure oil pump on a 7.3 Power Stroke. This one is, what year is this one?
01.
01. It'll be the same for all of them really, but this one specifically is an 01. And first thing we're doing here is draining some of the coolant out, because we're going to have to pull the upper radiator hose to get the fan and fan shroud out. And that's just the drain right there. Just a 3/4 inch socket will take that off. While you're doing that, you're going to want to open this up, because otherwise you're going to create a vacuum in the cooling system and you'll be here for days waiting for it to drain. Then once you've got about I don't know, 2 gallons or so drained out, you can go ahead and pull the upper radiator hose off and just kind of flop that out of the way. Then next we're going to take the coolant reservoir and just swing that out of the way. There's 3 8mm bolts that hold that in. One there, and then 2 down there. Next we're going to take the fan shroud loose. There's 2 8mm bolts. There's one there. And then there's supposed to be one right here, but it's missing.
It's over there.
Oh, you already took it off? Alright. And then we're also going to break the fan clutch loose, because we're going to pull the fan and the shroud out so we have room to get down to the crank pulley. They have tools that are specially made to take that off, the fan clutch. We didn't have them, so you can also, if you're careful, use a chisel and a hammer and just kind of hit on the left side of it to try to drive it. If you're lucky, it'll pop loose. Personally, I recommend renting the tools. It's easier, but you do you. And as you're loosening that, be careful you don't drop it. Probably weighs, what, 20 pounds?
Yeah.
And then you'll pull the fan and the shroud out, pull them out together. Next we'll pop the belt off. That's a 1/2 inch square drive.
Maybe.
There we go. Next we need to pull the bolt out of the crank pulley. And I'm sure they make a tool to hold that in place, keep it from spinning, but we don't have it. So I've just creatively wedged a pry bar in there, and hopefully it doesn't come flying out and go through the radiator. It's 15/16, by the way.
It's probably the ratchet, because I've had to replace it like 15 times. Fucking Mac.
It's bending the pry bar.
Is it?
Yeah, does it seem to be spinning any? Yep, there we go. Next we're going to get the crank pulley pulled off here, and there's 3 bolts, or 3 holes in it. There's one there, there, and there. And those are 3/8 thread, 3/8 inch by 16 thread pitch. And it's a good idea to take some bolts, or maybe even a tap, and run through there, just to not only to clean the threads out, but just to make sure that that is actually the thread pitch on it. On this one, that's what it is. They should all be the same, but verify first so you don't screw stuff up. And for the puller that we're using, it's just cheap AutoZone or whatever piece of crap you can get, rental, that I never returned. Now what we'll do is we'll take this puller, we're going to leave the cone end off of it, because this will end up fitting all the way through, and if we use the cone end, it's just going to end up messing the threads up at the front. So just take that and shove it down in there. Not really good on the puller, but I don't care. And then the bolts that come with the puller are way too long, so you're going to want to get some that are, I don't know, about 2 inches long or so, and thread those in. Then your setup should look pretty similar to that. You want to try to get these bolts about as even as you can, so you're not pulling sideways or anything. And then just real carefully start putting some tension on it, and it should start pulling off. Is it moving?
No.
And if you're having problems with the engine wanting to spin on you because the compression isn't quite catching it, you can also work on those 3 bolts there. Just try to do it as evenly as possible. It'll kind of pull it off without the engine spinning as much. Next, you'll take the 4 bolts off that holds the oil pump onto the block. So there, and up there. And those are all 10 millimeter. And once you've got them loosened up, but still threaded in part way, you can take a mallet, kind of tap on it a little bit, help pop it loose. That's not really working. Where's a regular hammer? Oh, I got it. It doesn't matter if we fuck it up, it's coming off anyway. And once you've got it broke loose all the way around, take your last bolt out. Next, you'll clean that area up. There's an O-ring that seats it. Get all that cleaned up good, and then we can install the new one. Sometimes, and like what just happened with us, the alignment pins will actually come out of the block and come with the pump. Real simple, just drive those out of the pump, and then we'll just pound them back into the block real careful. So once you get your pins back in the block and get the mating surface cleaned up, we go ahead and you want to dip these in oil. And with the Melling pump that we're installing, it doesn't matter the orientation of the gears. They can be flipped either way. With the OEM style pumps, they are actually marked. Be marked for the damper. And then this gear is as well. That's good on it. Well, it used to flow more oil, but yeah, maybe not anymore.
Good luck with it.
Yeah.
Getting that in there.
Yeah, especially one-handed. Let's try that again. One piece at a time. Come on. And then install the O-ring, making sure there's all kinds of junk down in there.
Yeah, you got it.
Put a little light coating of oil on that. then we can install it. So now to install the pump, you can see the flats on the crankshaft. You're going to want to line the gears up with that, and then rotate the housing to where the pins line up. Then get all 4 bolts snugged up by hand in a cross pattern, and then torque them to 20 foot-pounds, also in a cross pattern. Next, you're going to clean out the old silicone that's in here as best you can, because we're going to put a little bit more there. And then make sure this area is nice and clean, and then put a little light coating of oil on it, and also put some oil on the seal. Next, take a little bit of oil and put on the inside here just to help install it, help it slide on easier. Then line the keyway up and slide the balancer on as much as you can by hand. Next, since the bolt is actually too short to grab a hold of the threads yet, you're going to have to use a hammer and do some love taps very carefully. Then once you've tapped on it enough times, you should be able to get the bolt just started. And then just use the bolt to slowly draw the pulley all the way onto the crankshaft. Just don't torque it down yet, because once it stops, we're going to pull the bolt back out and then apply some silicone where we need to. And at some point, you'll probably have to get creative with a pry bar or something to hold the engine from spinning while you're doing this. Then you'll just run the crankshaft in until you feel the bolt all of a sudden get a heck of a lot more tension on it. And that means you've got it installed all the way. See here, it's lined up. Then we'll back the bolt back out, and I'll show you where to put the silicone. So we don't have it all the way pulled on yet, but far enough. And you put the silicone in the keyway area. Just put a decent bit right in there, and then go ahead and we'll pull it the rest of the way on. Dab on there and smear it. Then for good measure, you can also put a little bit on the washer here and smear it around. Just make sure you don't get any leaks. Then you go ahead and tighten this bolt to 212 foot-pounds. Now all that's left to do is reinstall your belt, put your fan and fan shroud back on, which a little tip for the fan, I don't actually torque those down because they're self-tightening. I just spin it until it stops, and then the next time the fan kicks on, it'll tighten itself up. You don't have to worry about it coming off or anything. I've been doing it that way for years, so I should know. But get everything put back together, and that's all there is to it.